You want to be great on third down, great in the red zone. At the end of the day, we put on the pads and cleats to win.
The message is clear from Russell Wilson as the Broncos host the Indianapolis Colts on Thursday Night Football, and we are getting you ready for kickoff. Welcome into the studio alongside Eric Dalala and Sidney Jones. I am Phil Milani. Guys, as tough as things were against the Raiders last week, one thing I think a positive takeaway is that Russell Wilson probably played his best game as the Denver Bronco.
Yeah, I completely agree, Phil. I thought the offense looked way more comfortable this weekend versus the Raiders than they had, most of the season so far. Russell Wilson, he threw for 237 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had a passer rating of 124.9. I mean, the offense's performance was definitely up and down, but I think there was a lot of positives that came out of this game. The red zone, them in the red zone, they've been looking a lot better. They've scored 3 touchdowns on their past 4 trips. Things, they still definitely need to be a little bit more consistent, but I think all around there's a lot of positive signs coming out of that game.
Yeah, especially in the first half, things were really rolling. Russell Wilson just 1 incompletion in that first half. In the second half, a little bit of a different story. Probably the Javonte Williams injury, a little bit deflating for this Broncos offense. They're going to have to find some other way to be able to run the football this Thursday.
Yeah, that starts with Melvin Gordon likely. That's what offensive coordinator Justin Allen said, that they're going to rely on him. Obviously had the big fumble against the Raiders and a couple of the week before that the Broncos were lucky to recover. But the Broncos, they're still going to have to rely on Melvin Gordon. They're going to have to let him get into a rhythm. Phil, I wonder if being that guy and not having to look over your shoulder and wonder who's getting the next carry, when am I going in, does that maybe help Melvin Gordon a little bit? But listen, they've got to be better on early downs. That starts with the run game. The Broncos, when they get behind the chains, that's when they struggled. They weren't good enough on third down. In that third quarter, just 1 first down. All of that, I think, ties back to, hey, can you run the ball effectively? We've seen it in the red zone. Now you have to see it kind of between the 20s.
Yeah, the Broncos are certainly going to be missing Javonte Williams, but as we know, Russell Wilson's so positive, he still has a lot of confidence in Melvin Gordon.
He cares. That's the great part about it, too. He genuinely cares about this team and cares about winning, cares about being successful, and he wants to be great every day. Like I said to you guys, there's nobody that works harder than him. He comes out here, does extra drills, the extra work, spends time here. He leaves here late. He's dedicated to his craft. That's what's made him one of the best players to play this game in this league for such a long time. What makes him such a great threat. I think the thing for him, too, is, he's going to get a lot of reps. He's going to get a lot of playing time. So, he's one of those guys, too, once he gets in his groove, watch out.
Watch out is right. Guys, let's talk about the other side of the ball a little bit. The Broncos defense looked like maybe one of the top defenses through 3 weeks. Little bit of a different story last week, Sid.
Yeah, Phil, I think the defense was maybe just trying to do a little bit too much. We heard that from both Bradley Chubb and defensive coordinator Ejiro Evero this week. They said that they were maybe trying to make too big of plays and not really just focusing on, the fundamentals going up against the Raiders. They really struggled to stop or slow down, I should say. Josh Jacobs, he ran for 144 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think for them this week, they really just need to turn the page and, like I said, focus back on the core fundamentals of this defense because, like you mentioned, they were playing at a really, really high level leading up to this Raiders game. And I think they just need to trust Coach E's scheme.
Yeah, just to play within the defense a little bit. What did you see? It seemed like they just weren't meeting the occasion, certainly not physically.
Well, I think there were 2 drives in particular where they weren't good enough against the run. That second drive of the game when the Raiders marched down and scored a touchdown, and then obviously that critical drive in the fourth quarter where the Raiders push it back to 9 points. But if you look at those, particularly that last drive, Randy Gregory's within an inch of getting Derek Carr down, and then Bradley Chubb, he has the edge, he has the position, just can't quite get there, creeps a little bit too far inside on really a nice play design by the Raiders there, but the offense has to help them out. They've got to sustain drives, change that time of possession a little bit. The ratio was not in the Broncos' favor, and listen, they did some good things. That goal line stop at the end of the third quarter, that was big, that kept the Broncos in the game, and so there were moments, but they've got to get a little bit of help from the offense, and then they've got to come up big in those big moments.
Yeah, certainly not all terrible, but definitely their worst performance of the season, just considering how well they were playing. One of the bright spots, Sydney, was Draymond Jones. He continues to have a hot start to the season. Yeah,
Phil, I think he's in the midst of a breakout season here. He already has 2 sacks on the season, 3 tackles for loss, a forced fumble. You mentioned it. He's had a hot start to the season, and we've seen him in a lot of snaps for this defense. games, and I think that just goes to show that he's too valuable not to be on the field for most of the game.
Yeah, he can certainly really get after the quarterback, and that's going to be crucial now that Randy Gregory head into IR this week.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to need the pass rush to come from somewhere. You talk about Nick Bonito, you talk about Baron Browning. Those are a couple of options. And Bradley Chubb, too. He needs to step up. It can't just be on the guy that comes in for Randy Gregory. Bradley Chubb has 3 sacks on the season. This is his time to make a push and show how valuable he is to this defense. But whether it's him, the guy who replaces Randy Gregory, Draymond Jones, sending more slot corner blitzes with K'Wan Williams that have been effective, Ejiro Evero is going to have to find a way to generate pressure because Randy Gregory was playing probably as good as anybody not named Pat Surtain out there.
Yeah, most definitely. Making a huge impact on a game-changing type of plays. Here's Bradley Chubb explaining what went wrong against the Raiders.
I feel like guys were just kind of pressing and trying to do too much or expecting one thing, you know what I mean, and stuff like that, and just not being fully locked in. I honestly feel like I was one of those guys kind of pressing and trying to do too much, and it's a division game, so I'm trying to make that big play and thinking it's play action, but I get out my gap and boom, it hits right there. So just being more disciplined when it comes down to what we're seeing.
The good news for the Broncos, a quick turnaround this week. They get a chance to wash that bad taste out of their mouth with the Colts coming to town on Thursday Night Football. But there's some impacts of just having a couple of days to get ready, right?
Yeah, Phil, a short week is always tough for these players. You know, they play on Sunday and then are asked to turn around and play 4 days later. It's tough on their bodies. It's tough from a preparation standpoint. But I did like what Coach Hackett said earlier this week. He said that the team really just has to lock in from a mental perspective. You know, they had a couple walkthroughs on Tuesday. They're going to have a short practice on Wednesday just to give their bodies a little bit of rest and time to restore heading into this Thursday night game. But yeah, it's always tough. It's tough for these injured guys as well to have to turn around and try and play on Thursday.
That might be the biggest impact for the Broncos, right? Just the injuries. Hoping to maybe get some guys back this week, but like guys like Michael Ojemudia, Greg Dulcich, not starting their clock on their return from IR. Erica, the injuries seem like they're mounting up for the Broncos here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously last week was the biggest week so far with Javonte Williams and Randy Gregory going down. Broncos will get Greg Dulcich back soon. Doesn't seem like it's going to be this week, but between him, Justin Simmons, help is on the way in the coming weeks. But yeah, the Broncos would love to get through this game with no more major injuries, knock on wood, Phil. And if you get through this game, you talk about the challenges of a short week. Well, if you get through this, now you have a lot of time to rest up before that Monday night game against the Chargers here in 2 weeks, essentially. And so if you can get a win, you're going to feel really good about where you stand for the next 10 or so days before you begin preparation. And so no matter the challenge, mentally, physically, you've got to find a way to get through this game and get a win because you don't want to go through, the challenges of this week and then sit there at 2-3. That is kind of a wasted effort at that point.
Yeah, you can't lose 2 games in 5 days. I mean, that's a big blow to the season. It is the longest stretch a team can go in the NFL in the regular season without having a bye week, from a Thursday all the way to a Monday night game. So the Broncos will have an opportunity to get some rest here. Earlier this week, Nathaniel Hackett was asked, hey, do you like these Thursday night games?
I'm glad we got one quick after this last week. So, I mean, from a coaching standpoint, I mean, it's a grind. It's definitely a grind. I know it's a grind on the players, but it's part of our profession, and it's prime time, and everybody gets to watch it, so you're always excited for that.
Time to wrap up the show now with predictions, starting with you, Sydney.
Phil, I'm going to say 24-17 Broncos. I think coming off this Raiders loss, the guys are going to bring the energy, they're going to bring the juice, and make sure they get the win on Thursday night.
Eric?
I'll say 24-16, Phil. Pretty close.
You're just copying Sydney
close,
now.
yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, maybe 2018. We'll have to see. I mean, it's going to be a close game. I think the Broncos offense clicks a little bit, but just some weird things happen on Thursday night. You never know quite what's going to happen when 2 teams meet on short rest.
Yeah, I sort of think the Broncos are about to hit the ground running a little bit. I know we've been saying that for a couple of weeks now, but it feels like maybe now is the time. Offense, I'm going to say 21. Defense, I'll say 13, 21-13. That's different than you guys.
Yeah, that is different.
Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for us. For Eric Kalala and Sydney Jones, I'm Phil Milani. This has been Ready for Kickoff.